Hello and welcome to Notes on Film. My name is Josue Peralta. This is day 2 of 10 as we review the scores for this year's Oscar-nominated movies for Best Score and Best Picture. Today's film is Sinners, directed by Ryan Coogler. Scoring Coogler Sinners is longtime partner Ludwig Göransson. Ludwig has scored every single one of Coogler's films, starting from Fruitvale Station to Creed, both Black Panthers, for which he won the Academy Award for the first one, and fast forward to 2026, where Sinners has already won the BAFTAs and the Golden Globes, and now is nominated for this year's Academy Awards. Ludwig has also worked with acclaimed director Christopher Nolan since 2020, starting with Tenet. He also did his next one, which was Oppenheimer. That one also won the Golden Globes. That one won the BAFTAs and won the Academy Award for Best Score. Before diving into the score, let's discuss the movie for a bit of context. Sinners tells the story of a young man who runs into twins who come into town who want to put on a big show and a big party for everybody to attend until it all goes awry when vampires come in and ruin the party. Now, because this film delved into so many demonic or darker themes, it was just outside of my sensibilities, so I do have to admit that I didn't watch the whole thing. I only watched up until I saw the vampires coming in, and I saw a lot of that stuff, and I was just kind of scared out of there, and I realized that that's a little silly for some. I get it, that's no big deal, but for me it was, so I had to stop watching there. Meaning that I can't really speak to the music after they came in, so you'll have to forgive me for not having the full picture there. Now, let's get into the score composed by Ludwig Göransson, but before I do, let me put on my Clark Kent glasses, just in case I'm too critical. I have the excuse that it was the other guy and not me. Okay, let's jump in by first talking about how the score played within the movie. The part of the film that I did watch and the music, I thought it was perfect. No notes. By that I mean, I thought I was in the time. The way that Ludwig has the propensity and the skill to speak about cultures that he doesn't, or I should say that he's not a part of, not that he doesn't understand. I think that he comes to understand them in a way that speaks to them in ways that I'm not sure many other directors could. There's a reason why he won for Black Panther, and there's a reason why this one is in line to perhaps win again. The way he can tell those stories in a way that is reminiscent of the time and also true to the people then speaks volumes and to the quality of music that he writes for it. To sum it up, I'll just say this, that from what I did see, it worked extremely well, and I was hooked from the very first note up until when I stopped. And if that was any indication for the rest of the film, I'm sure it worked amazing there as well. Now, as a standalone album, I thought it was great. The hallmark of a great standalone score is when you can hear the story of the movie being told well through just the music, or a story all on its own being told through the music itself. And this one does just that. I thought that it was awesome how I put in here how the music starts kind of sounding like mischief. You know, with the twins, they're coming in, and I put like muscle, like, oh man, something bad's about to happen, or, you know, there's some brawling coming up, and that's exactly what ended up happening. I heard some Western influences. There was a lot of suspense. The harmonica and the banjo of the Western South were heavy, rich, and just awfully good. And I say the West and the South, but that's not really where the movie is based anyway. However, that's what it reminded me of, because that's what I know per se. But it was really good, and it put me in the South. It made you feel like you were living in the South during that time period. And then as I was listening to again just the score on its own, I remember, I'm like, wait a second, something's going on. There's a little bit of suspense. There's a little bit of horror creeping in. And then I literally wrote horror elements creeping in. And then I was like, wait a second, what's going on? And then it just did like an about face, where before you were vibing to what was going on. You were vibing to the scenes, to the atmosphere. All of a sudden, the things that you wouldn't normally expect to be in that era, in that time, are just take over the entire score. And that's reminiscent, and that's analogous, and that's proportional to what happens in the film when the vampires come in. I was like, wait a second, is it halfway through? It's not even halfway through. It's, I think, track 7 or something along those lines. Out of 18 or 19, so something like that, that it starts coming in. So it's not even halfway, and we're already in trouble, just auditory trouble when it comes to the vibes. There was a mix of the rock elements that were jarring compared to the setup, where it starts to feel alien. That's exactly what I put down. It starts to feel foreign, and almost like the foreign influences are hijacking the vibe that the Smoke Tag Twins and the community is trying to build. That's exactly what's happening, and you can hear that in the score itself. It is awesome how it does that. I screamed how it kind of turned into rock music, and it was really interesting how it starts like kind of the southern music starts turning us in, and it felt like assimilation, kind of like when vampires turn. I think I saw a clip online where and I did read the rest of the synopsis of the movie, where a lot of the main characters are bitten and turn into vampires themselves. So you can hear that in the music, how it kind of starts assimilating into those harder rock modern tones. Whereas I mentioned before that the music felt like it was of the time, but then the alien influences come in and you hear something much more modern that you wouldn't expect with the what do you call it, with the guitars and the bass, electric guitars and the bass and things like that. At one point, I kept using the word alien a lot. I was like, what the heck happened to the upbeat folk? And then what the heck, alien again? Like what is this? I don't understand. At some point, it turns into straight horror with religious undertones. There was one part where I think the song's called Thy Kingdom Come, and you hear a choir. And that's really eerie to hear, or to see, or just to see the amalgamation of something that starts out pure, then becomes taken over, then it starts assimilating and blending the two together into like some sort of new thing altogether. But it seems like a marriage made in hell, where you wouldn't want to see the pureness of the original music mixed with this, for lack of a better term, that's not how I feel about it necessarily, for this quote unquote devil music. And the fact that that they're married together here in the music makes it feel like it's not natural, but it's happening and there's nothing you can do about it. Makes you feel a little helpless. And then I heard a little bit of a lull, kind of like a rock reprise, and then I noticed, and I was yearning for the good stuff. I'm like, why? The good stuff is nowhere to be found. Where is it? Where is that innocence that Sammy had that is no longer there? I think the sound, the what do you call it? The album is a journey through Sammy's experience throughout that one fateful day, where I was yearning, like his dad, like, buddy, you shouldn't be, getting into that kind of stuff, but he could not help himself. And then I was like, oh, here we go. Oh, spoke too soon. It's back. But like I said, the good stuff, it came back, but with more rock in it, meaning that how I'm taking it is that the story is like, well, he cannot be separated. His experience can never be separated from this day, and he will never be the same. That's what I understood from that. And then nearing the end of the score, or of the album, it talks about how, or I should say, I wrote, back to just a banjo, simple melodic music like before, but now with more strings, which is interesting because I didn't hear a lot of strings in the beginning, but now there were more modern strings. And then in parentheses, the rock came back in, meaning that there's still a part of that is still a part of him, and that, like I said, he will never be the same, and that's just who he is, as we see into the final part of the movie, where I think, if I read correctly, one of the twins and his girl come to visit him, and then I think they offer him to become a vampire as well, but he's like, nah, I think I'm okay. So I think it's a callback to that. And then I think I wrote that it ended how it started, only sadder, and that's a really good way to again, just encapsulate the entire experience of what Sinners was. And this standalone score really told that story. So even though I didn't see the entirety of the film, as soon as the horror elements came in full force, I was able to hear it and experience it through the music. Meaning that if, again, the movie was anything like the music, it was a pretty fantastic second half of the film that really told the story from the beginning, where Sammy's running into the church, from the car, and you see a lot of smoke and whatnot, to the end where we see why he was running in and how that changed him forever. Lastly, let's talk about some songs in the album that stood out to me, or as I call them, bangers. My favorite piece of the entire score was the very second track of the entire album, which is called The Smokestack Twins. In that one, I heard what I wrote was innocence, a sense of brotherhood, a sense of intimacy, and a bond between, twins, which is very apt because, again, they're twins and you really don't have a bond like a twin. I've always said that I've always wanted a twin, and if I did, we would run the world together. And it's that kind of bond is something you can hear in that, and it was my favorite track by far. The second one I put was number 3, called Grace B.O. and Lil Lisa. That one had good vibes. I heard a lot of action, and I heard a lot of what like adventure of the era. Like, oh, we're embarking on something really cool, which is the setting up of the party and preparing and things like that. And something like, oh, you'd like to have fun. Like, oh, this is a really good, enjoyable moment. I thought that one was really, really good. The third one that I enjoyed was number 4. It was called Delta, or Slim's Patch. That one, I heard a lot of Southern, just ambiance and a place you would want to play around in. I don't know why play came to mind, but it really stuck to me because I didn't just write it once. I wrote it more than once. So again, I don't know if innocence, like play and innocence, are going into it, but it did feel like it was simpler times. Maybe that's what I'm alluding to. That times were simpler, and you could hear it. And though things weren't perfect, obviously, they were a lot simpler than what would end up happening later that night. Next is Clarksdale Love, which seems like shy love vying to be transcendental, ends on a sad note. I don't remember particularly if this is the one where I think his Smoke, goes to his ex-wife or his estranged wife, and they talk about their baby, or he goes to the grave, and this is where I'm hearing. But I did hear kind of trying to be transcendental, forgive me, and it does end on that sad note of, man, I wish I could be with you again. In track 6 was the last one that the innocence died, I thought, and it's called Why You Here / Before the Sun Went Down, and I put some sort of paradise being disturbed, and this is where fear is introduced. The 7th track, like I mentioned before, is the one where the rock influences are coming in and everything just changes forever. From then on, all the way down to the final, you hear a lot more of rock influences, you hear a lot of horror, and it turns it into an entirely different album. Like if I were to just show somebody 1 through 6 and then 7 through 16, they would be like, oh yeah, no, those are 2 separate things. And yes, they come in back and forth and they, intermingle every once in a while, but you wouldn't think that they're 2 different things, and they definitely, are not. But in the film, it's like two things of like, before the danger and then after the danger is introduced. I thought that it was really, really good. If you're into horror influences, that second half is something you would enjoy a lot more. As well as if you're into suspense, because it has a lot of that here too. The last favorite for me was track number 17, which is called Elijah, which is a look back. I called it a return to quote unquote normalcy or innocence, but not really. Because again, it wasn't, you can't really be normal after what happened to you that day. And I heard an apology in there somewhere, some sort of remorse, some sort of sadness. There was a lot of that too, and I was really saddened that the score ended mutedly. I wrote that down. Started way up here, ended way down there, and that was really sad to be able to hear through the through the music. And apart from that, it just really told the story in a way that I don't think anybody else could. So I think Ludwig did an excellent job. And like I said, I wish it would have ended on a higher tone, but that really just wasn't the story that was being told at all. With the critic part done, let me go ahead and give my final thoughts on this score. So whereas an 8, 9, or 10 is Hall of Fame territory, and a 5, 6, or 7 ranges from good to very good, I think the score gets a solid 8. How the score played in the film, I can speak of only in a limited fashion, but when listening to the entire album, it's very clear that Ludwig still knows what he's doing, he still has the edge, and still can put on a show. One of the ones I really enjoyed the most, and one I'll come back to if I ever want to put myself in that mentality, I guess, of freedom and a little bit of innocence when it comes to that earlier part of the album that I really enjoyed so much. But that's what I thought of Sinners and the score composed by Ludwig Göransson. I'm looking forward to Ludwig's next score, which is coming sooner than later, in this year's The Odyssey, directed by Christopher Nolan. Like I mentioned before, he is a very frequent flyer with him, so I'm excited to see what direction he takes it. He's been so experimental before. I'm curious to see if he did something a little bit more traditional for a more traditional story. If you'd like to suggest a score for review, please go ahead and write it in the comments below, or you can find me personally on Instagram at It's Attractive, where you can also send me suggestions or just any other thoughts you might have. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and I will see you tomorrow for day 3 of 10 as we review the scores of this year's Best Score nominees and Best Picture nominees. See you all then. Take care. Peace.